Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is the BRN Sunday podcast. I'll be joined today by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we go around the globe to analyze all the issues this week in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the BRN Sunday podcast. Well, let's kick things off with a look at technology and financial technology. And joining me on the line, he's Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with the Motley Fool, Daniel Klein. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Doing quite well. And yourself?
Yeah. It's been a weird couple of weeks. The pandemic is getting to me, but other than that, I'm doing great.
Well, good. Great to talk with you. But as the world turns with the pandemic and so many things that we're all facing financially and healthcare-wise, et cetera, lots going on in the tech world. And Apple... I know we talked about Apple last week, but Apple unveiled a new iOS 14, which is hard to believe. Dan, what can you tell us about iOS 14 and some of the surprises there?
Yeah, so this is the operating system for your phone. And most of the times when they announce an upgrade, you think, oh, God, I'm going to download it. Nothing's going to work. I'm going to have to redo all my passwords. I don't know why it always forced you to redo your Starbucks password or re-enter it. Nobody ever remembers that, and it becomes a big pain. This time it was flawless. I grabbed the upgrade, and it actually makes changes that I like. So what can you do that's different? There's the ability to create sort of widgets. So on my first screen, the login screen of my iPhone, I was able to create this little box. It's about the size of 4 icons, and I added the podcast app, the Maps app, and the How Charged Is Your Battery app. I don't know what that one's called.
Battery charge
you
app? No,
Yeah, you
okay,
can
sorry.
scroll through the 3. So those are the things that I use most often, and they're now in the upper right corner. At the bottom of the homepage, I created a widget that's sort of 8 icons wide. That shows the weather. The weather is very relevant. It's 79 degrees here in West Palm Beach, and it's going to rain at 12 o'clock. 3 screens in, I created a stocks app, and I'm showing it to the screen, except we're doing a podcast, so not a video cast, so that doesn't help. And I put all of the indexes I'm following. Now, I don't generally recommend that people look at their stocks every day, but of course, with what I do for a living, it's important for me to know if the NASDAQ, if the Dow, if those things are up or down or what's going on. So I was able to create custom widgets that sort of help enhance my experience. This is the first big change I've seen in iOS that's meaningful, where I can actually see the change. And I was really skeptical, but I got to admit, Jeff, I really like it.
So, Dan, you are I would call you like a super user when it comes to technology. Obviously, this is what you do for a living. I, on the other hand, I'm pretty good with technology, but I would say I'm more of a lay person when it comes to that. How easy, how different, how difficult will it be for me as a lay person or others out there listening to use this new iOS once they download it? Because they have to download it, right? Or they do an automatic update, they'll get it, but they have to install it.
So yeah, you have to download it up to a point. At a certain point, they force it on you. But right now, it's your choice, and it does upgrade security and other things. So you should absolutely do it. But that being said, 90% of it was really easy. So creating the widgets, deciding what they look like, deciding what goes in them, that's unbelievably easy. Figuring out that I could put multiple widgets in one box, that they didn't tell me I could do that, but by just layering them on top of each other, it worked. What I haven't been able to figure out is some of my apps moved around, because when you put a widget in a spot, it forces the apps. It's easy to move each icon on the same page. I haven't figured out how to move icons between pages, so I have some weird blank spots in my iPhone menu. So I'd say it's maybe 80% ease of use, but the stuff you can add easily works really, really well. And your ability to delete apps, it's much simpler than it used to be. This is generally a very good change for Apple, and you've seen it. Whenever anyone changes an interface, how long do people spend whining on Facebook when people change the Facebook interface?
A ton of times.
Yeah, this is a really good job by Apple. And look, it's not massively different, but they added things that are useful. And if you scroll all the way to the right, you also get to see all of your apps sort of grouped by basket. They call it App Library. And you can see, I have ESPN and The Athletic and the CW and Netflix. That's in my entertainment basket. I have Uber Eats and DoorDash and Amazon. That's in my shopping and food basket. I don't know how useful it is, but sometimes it's hard to find an app. And of course, you can just swipe down and type it in. But those baskets do give you another way to find things you're looking for.
Yeah, and Dan, I liken to a change in iOS format, and I think it's always better when things are gradual. But remember when going from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95 to Windows 98 to XP to Vista or Vista to XP, and then Windows 7 to Windows 10, right? And then if you have different interfaces for Word or Microsoft Office, right, that causes people a lot of concern and challenge, especially for some of us who don't do that stuff all day long, right? I mean, to learn new interfaces. So
Yeah,
the anxiety that probably people have is pretty high.
absolutely. Like Jeff, I worked at Microsoft when they rolled out Windows 8, and Windows 8 is going to go down as the Apple Newton. It was a product ahead of its time. So the idea of Windows 8 is then CEO Steve Ballmer believed that we were moving towards a touchscreen world. So instead of offering a touchscreen interface and a traditional interface, which is sort of how Windows works now, he simply said, "Yep, let's make the touchscreen interface first and foremost." And that was great if you had a touchscreen computer, but most people didn't. So to say Windows 8 was reviled, that will be putting it mildly. Because as you know, they went from Windows 8 to Windows 10 to symbolically distance themselves from how big a change that was. That said, when I worked there, they gave me devices that were optimized for Windows 8, and it was a wonderful interface. It was just too much too soon without giving people the familiarity. They got rid of the start button. People didn't know how to get to where they were going. Change has to be gradual, and it has to be optional. And that's what Apple has done here. There's a lot of change in this iOS, but if I don't want that change, basically there's no change. And that's a really good approach as far as I can say.
So from one big company to a big tech company to another big tech company, let's talk about Amazon, Dan, because they unveiled new spherical Echo speakers, a flying indoor security camera, and this was really interesting to me, a cloud gaming service. So is there anything now that Amazon doesn't do? I mean, they don't do manicures yet, do they?
They might.
They say they sell manicure kits, but they don't do manicures yet. I'm waiting for that to happen. Anyway, what can you tell us about this? Because this is amazing.
So Amazon is in a battle we're not really talking about. So the big change here is there's improvements on the Amazon Fire TV device. We'll talk about the security and the Ring drone in a minute, but they took the Amazon Fire TV and they improved the interface. They're trying to make it easier to get to the content you're looking for. Why is this important? Amazon is not the number one TV streaming device. That would be Roku. Roku has about 50% of the market.
Yep.
And Roku is constantly working to integrate everything, to make it easier to get to where you're going. I actually think the best device out there is the $49.99 TiVo device that's a partnership with Roku that I think makes finding basically you don't have to log in and out of each app every time. So if you want to watch something on Netflix and then switch to something on Hulu, it works really, really easy. Roku is getting closer to that, and so is Amazon Fire. So I haven't played with this device yet. I've only read about it. I'm sure I'll buy one because I'm that kind of idiot. But that said, everyone is focusing on serving customers better. I actually don't have to buy one because the software will update on the existing devices I have
There you go.
at some point soon. So it's really about Jeff is watching, the Lakers Nuggets game, but he wants to switch to check in on what's happening on Beat Bobby Flay. How do I make that easier, even if that's switching between two apps? And they've done some nice things like making the Echo spherical instead of the big cone it used to be. I guess, or really more of a pylon. I guess that's a nice thing. It's really just cosmetic. But they're constantly evolving and upgrading, and I think that's a great thing.
And Dan, what about this gaming service? I mean, they'd be competing with, I would assume, Microsoft, and who's the other one? Nintendo. Do they still do something? I haven't played a video game in a long time. I'm clearly.
It's really everybody. So Microsoft has Xbox Cloud Gaming. Apple has Apple Arcade. You obviously have the new consoles coming out.
Yep.
Sony and Microsoft. Microsoft is going to sell their console as essentially hardware as a service. So you're going to be able to pay for a subscription that gives you access to not only games, but also gives you the hardware device. But basically what Amazon is doing is they're going to sell a $49.99 dedicated controller. It looks just like an Xbox controller. I'm not entirely sure what the differences are. And for $4.99 a month, you're going to get access to a bunch of games. Now, I signed up for a trial. They're not taking people yet, or they're taking them on like a rolling basis. That being said, they haven't really said what games are going to be offered. So, is this a game changer? I don't know because I don't know what games I'm going to get for my $4.99 a month.
Are you a big gamer? I know your son plays some games, Dan. Just and you made some references when we've been talking on the show. But do you play? Do you and your wife play a lot of games?
No, not really. I'm excited about a game like every 6 months. Like Star Wars Squadrons is coming out, which
Yeah,
is
I
going to
saw
allow you
that.
to duel with like a TIE fighter versus an X-Wing. And I'm going to buy it and I'll play it for like 7 minutes and not be good at it. And then my son will play it.
Yeah, I mean, there's like my recollection, and again, I haven't played video games in a long time, but I grew up with Atari, Nintendo, NES, and Sega, and when they got to like six, seven, eight buttons, that's just too much for my pea brain to handle. It's become very complicated when people are playing like Call of Duty or one of these games where you're I don't know how people do it because you got to be like thinking. I think fast, but not that fast.
I often joke that basically I buy those games and I spend like 15 minutes like
Yeah.
looking at my shoes, walking around in a circle and like shooting my gun up in the air before I give up because I can't do it. Like it there's a level of complexity that I don't find all that fun. I sort of want games where you're more just like button mashing and it's an arcade like experience. I want to like games. I'm an adult. I don't have all that much time to be playing video games.
I get it. I get it. Well, Dan, always a pleasure talking with you. I always enjoy. I think our audience does enjoy the tech fintech updates. I think people more and more realize that this is really part of the broader financial conversation. And clearly, if you're spending money on new gaming and things like that, you may not be saving as much as you should. So really appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday.
I'll see you Tuesday.
Bye bye.
Before I have to pull the strap out the cut. Give me the microphone first so I can bust like a bubble.
Welcome back. Now time to talk real estate. Joining me on the line is Market Watch's real estate reporter, Mr. Jacob Passy. Hi, Jacob. Welcome back to the program.
Glad to be here.
Always a pleasure talking with you. And as we know, lots of things going on with interest rates, mortgage rates, and with real estate. What's top of mind for you this week?
Yeah, so this week we got the data on home sales for August. So two separate reports came out, existing home sales and new home sales. And for starters, both were up, which is probably not a huge surprise. What was actually quite surprising, however, was how much new home sales in particular increased. So home sales are measured with an annual rate, so it's not just this like literal number of homes sold in a month. It's basically like if this were, to carry out over the course of the year, what would the annual rate of home sales be? And for the first time since 2006, so since before the Great Recession, new home sales exceeded an annual rate of 1 million homes sold in August.
Wow.
So that is a really stunning figure and kind of just shows how, the, housing market really is, maybe the only or certainly one of the only bright spots right now or major bright spots right now in the, economic recovery from the pandemic.
That's amazing. And what is this attributed to? Was there pent up demand? People just said they were looking and they decided to buy. Is there some attribution analysis there?
Yeah, so it's a combination of factors. It's basically like the perfect storm for new home sales. So for starters, exactly right. There is tons of pent up demand in the market. Lots of folks who would have normally bought, in May, June, April were unable to because of the pandemic, because of stay-at-home orders, or just they weren't comfortable going out and looking for a home to buy. And so a lot of those folks are now shopping. And then, as you and I talk about a ton, home loan interest rates, mortgage rates, are just so ridiculously low right now that is obviously a factor. Folks are emboldened by the low interest rates in the market, that they just want to scoop up a home as quickly as possible, so they're rushing to do that right now. But then we have the inventory situation going on where, in spite of how home sales have been booming, lots of sellers or folks who would like to sell their homes still aren't. Listings are down significantly. There was a report this week from Realtor.com that showed that we're basically we've missed about 400,000 listings nationwide since the pandemic began. Wow. Compared with a year ago. So basically that's how many, folks are just not putting their homes on the market. And that's probably for a number of reasons. One, if you live in your home and you might want to list it and, maybe trade up to a larger home. Well, if there aren't that many homes for sale, it becomes a prisoner's dilemma, to borrow from like kind of the economic jargon. Mm-hmm. If no one's agreeing, you're going to find yourself in a worse situation. So I think there's kind of that scenario playing out. And I think there's mixed into it. There's still some concern that, sellers have about the state of the economy, and, that's probably, driving them to be more cautious. So the result of that is you have tons of people in the market, pent-up demand, plus you have, millennials and now even Gen Zers are kind of entering their peak home buying years, are getting married, having kids, needing more space. And so that's happening while there's low interest rates and there's no existing homes on the market, basically. And so you find yourself, many buyers are finding themselves in this position where they are essentially forced into the market for new homes because there's not much else to buy. Mm-hmm. Of course, new homes are more expensive, and so it's not as if all buyers can afford to do that. But it is kind of this interesting dynamic playing out. Plus, the home builders are also, taking what they've learned from the pandemic and, infusing that into the offerings they're putting out there. Like I spoke this week, and I have an interview that should be going up soon with the CEO of KB Home, which is one of the nation's larger home builders. And, he was talking about how they've rolled out new options in terms of, giving folks more ability to convert, if it's like a planned home where it's like a 4-bedroom property, they now can design it so one of those bedrooms is converted into a home office, or the bathroom has a door from the outside of the home so that if you have guests in your backyard, they can go and use the bathroom without walking through your whole home, which is, a unique consideration because of the pandemic, but is actually something that they think buyers might be interested in. So kind of this perfect storm going on.
And Jacob, I seem to recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the first-time home buyers, so people who are just in the market for the first time, might have a little bit more difficulty. Who is there a breakdown of what the demographics of people that are out there getting these newer homes that are making the purchase? Are they people that have already owned homes, or are these, as you're suggesting, millennials who are now raising a family and want to move into a larger home, maybe out in the burbs?
Yeah, so when I spoke with the CEO of KB Home, Jeff Metzger, he the figures he gave me were kind of actually surprising. The percentage of their buyers who are first-time home buyers has increased during the pandemic. So it was 58% in the second quarter, and it was 65% in the third quarter. And so, in the span of 90 days, there was this sudden kind of wave of more first-time home buyers. And I think that speaks to kind of the situation we're seeing play out with, the existing home market. A lot of folks who already have a home that they're living in, they may be more inclined to renovate it or add on, a den or add on an extra bedroom than, up and move entirely, because I think there's this concern, rightfully so, that it would be hard to find somewhere to buy. So I think you do, and I think there is, one trend that we've seen from millennial buyers in recent years, which he kind of and others have said is still playing out, is that, millennial buyers, perhaps more so than, their parents' generation or even like the Gen X generation, when they buy a home, there's less of this kind of view of buying a starter home and then, selling that and buying a bigger home and then selling that and buying a bigger home. Millennial buyers, not completely, but, kind of generally speaking, are more inclined to buy a forever home. They're more inclined to buy a home that they intend to live in for most of their life, or certainly many more years than perhaps their parents did. And so I think that gives home builders an edge in a sense to appeal to those types of first-time millennial home buyers, because you can present yourself as rather than settling for less, you can spend a little bit more money with me and design the exact home that you want. So I think that we are seeing that play out a bit in the market right now.
And then last question, we've continually chatted about the more rigorous scrutiny of lenders. Has that loosened at all in terms of proof of income and all the things that we've talked about over the years? How does that kind of factor in here?
Yeah, so the most recent mortgage credit availability index from the Mortgage Bankers Association, which is kind of their measure of, how loose or tight credit is in the mortgage market, went down. And so what that suggests is, lenders are tightening. I think there is still an extent to which, and this isn't true across the board. When I wrote about this the past couple of weeks, and I've gotten plenty of messages from community banks and other lenders who are saying, well, we're actually writing more loans than we ever have before, which is certainly happening in some parts of the market and some parts of the country. But by and large, I think that lenders are still being especially cautious right now. They're not necessarily, lending to people with lower credit scores as readily as they might have before. They're not necessarily making loans with super low down payments. In recent years, you've been able to get, 3% down loans, things like that, and those are probably harder to come by today. But I think that, it's not, we're not reaching crisis levels in terms of, the unavailability of mortgage credit. Mm-hmm. I think that, you can still shop around, but, especially if you're kind of someone who has, a lower credit score, or if you need to get out like a jumbo mortgage, for instance, a mortgage loan in excess of what qualifies for backing from like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. If you're in a super high cost market, that might be a harder loan to get today, and something to, consider as you're looking.
Yeah, really good information, Jacob. Always a pleasure chatting with you. This is a fascinating marketplace, and at least there's one segment of the economy that seems to be doing very well. Have a great rest of the weekend. Yeah. We will talk to you again next week, my friend.
Yeah, talk next week. Take care.
Welcome back, and now time to take a look at the latest social media trends in finance. And joining me on the line, he's the Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn, and he is also the editor with This Week in Finance newsletter, which, of course, you can find on the LinkedIn platform. You just got to click under his name, Mr. Devin Banerjee. Hey, Devin, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to be with you.
Yeah, double duty as usual for you on a Friday. Glad to have you back in the fold. I know you're taking a little personal time with you and with your wife and family, and glad to have you back. What's top of mind this week? Just because you go away, even though you and the team do a tremendous amount of work, the world still rotates. So what's been top of mind this week? Tongue in cheek, of course.
Yeah, no, it was an extremely busy week on the LinkedIn platform, Jeff. I'm going to start with a couple of the news items that were really most popular among our 700 million members, and then get into some more exclusive stuff that we rolled out this week.
Sure.
So number one, we got to talk about the job market. Unemployment claims figures out earlier this week, and the real takeaway is that the job market recovery appears to be losing momentum, and it's doing so just before the start of winter. Well, maybe not just, but a couple weeks away, from cold weather that risks shutting operations further. So new claims for unemployment benefits rose last week to about 870,000. To put that in context, that's about 4 times the level before the pandemic hit. It's down, of course, from the huge records and spikes we saw in March earlier this year, when we saw 6 million plus. But as I said, about 4 times pre-pandemic levels. Labor Department data also shows companies are continuing to lay off workers, even as some others bring workers back. But again, really, you'll see the word stubborn a lot in the news coverage about the job market. These unemployment claims figures are just remaining stubbornly high. They are not declining. So that's a bit concerning, again, as I said, as we head into winter.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's disconcerting. I mean, we have this. I think we're under 10% unemployment, but all those 10% are people that need jobs and have families and homes and need to make ends meet. And I wonder if some of this, or a lot of this, is due to the uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty, right? We don't have stimulus. We've been waiting for months, weeks, months, whatever it is, in terms of additional stimulus, although maybe there's been some developments I'm not aware of. And also, we've got an election pending. So all those things are probably playing into what employers and future employers are thinking about.
Exactly. Employers thrive on certainty, and right now that's lacking, exactly to your point. I would just point out, for anyone who is looking for work, we have started, actually we've been doing this for a couple of months now, but at the top right of your LinkedIn feed, you'll see an item called Here's Who's Hiring Right Now. And very recently, just in the past couple of weeks, we've been adding quite a lot of retailers looking for looking for temporary hires, I should say, but for the winter holiday season. But there are others we've listed there that are looking for permanent hires, so I would just point that out.
Yeah, I've seen that, by the way.
Another item.
I've seen that, by the way,
Yeah.
and also I have to kudos to the team. I think you guys rolled out a little bit different layout for LinkedIn, both on the app and the web platform, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a couple days ago.
That's right. Good catch, Jeff. Yeah, we're a bit warmer colors, trying to make it, more easy to use, more readable.
Yep.
So glad you saw that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Another item. No problem. Yeah, another item, Jeff, news item this week that was quite popular is a Citigroup study out about the economic costs of racism and discrimination. So this study really homed in on the wage gap and the lack of access to credit, like mortgages, small business loans, and the access to higher education for Black Americans due to, in many cases, systemic discrimination and in many cases racism as well. Citigroup estimated that the U.S. economy has lost over the past 20 years about $16 trillion in potential output because of these gaps. Citigroup concluded that the U.S. could gain over the next 5 years an extra $5 trillion if a lot of this systemic discrimination and racism could be ended. And this, of course, really took off on the platform, amplifying a lot of the conversation that we've been seeing since June about systemic racism and discrimination in this country. But this report really putting, a dollar figure to the costs of that. And, in the conversation on LinkedIn, we're really seeing it wake up a lot more senior executives because of, unfortunately, but also fortunately, because of that dollar cost associated with it.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe a little bit late to the game. I don't know where they've been the last few months, but hey, that's just my opinion. Not that it doesn't represent Devin or LinkedIn or the BRN. So sorry, go ahead, Devin. Just my opinion.
Also this week, Jeff, which we went a little bit deeper on in the network interview, is our top startups list, an annual list that we at LinkedIn derive from our data. So looking at where people want to work among the startup ecosystem, where jobs are growing the fastest, where demand for jobs is growing the fastest. Two trends I want to point out to you, Jeff. I think you'll like both of them. The first is healthcare, a strong showing on the list as the world of healthcare changes during this pandemic. So companies like Databricks, which is a software provider to healthcare providers, Bright Insight, again, another IT company serving the healthcare sector, Capsule, the digital pharmacy, that one that's offering free same-day delivery on your drugs and your pharmaceuticals, Modern Health, computer software company, and many more. Curative, Mindstrong, which is a mental health company, Trella Health. These are all just Carbon Health, medical practice company. These are all just on our list of 50 in the United States. So that was really interesting to see. Again, the healthcare industry is changing a lot by necessity right now. The other trend is Fintech Startups, which you and I talked about on the network. on Friday. Our number one startup on the list was digital mortgage lender Better.com, which has doubled in headcount in just the past 6 months. Went from just over 1,500 employees to now about 4,000. And the CEO, Vishal Garg, who I interviewed and profiled, wants to double again in the next 6 months. So that company in particular, the mortgage business, really being driven by low rates, low mortgage rates, in fact, record low rates on the 30-year fixed. And also just the strong housing market, which was strong before the pandemic hit, as this huge millennial generation ages into home ownership, but also accelerated by the pandemic. Jeff, as you and I have been talking about, people looking to move, people looking for more space, people whose employers are going remote or allowing some of the workforce to go remote. So that was really interesting. Also in the top 5 on our list, Robinhood, of course, which we talk about a lot. They rose to number 3 on the list from number 7. Again, tailwinds there, stimulus checks, boredom of people at home looking to day trade, volatility in the markets, creating that sense of FOMO as the markets have recovered, at least sharply from the March low. So a lot of those tailwinds driving the fintech ecosystem right now.
That is a very, very popular place to be. I do like the fact, Devin, that healthcare is one of those segments of the economy that people are looking to move into. And look, we've been through a pandemic. We're not through it yet, but people look like people who want to help, and it's clearly going to be an important aspect of our economy today and in the future because we need healthcare, and you will need healthcare, especially in retirement. So really, really, really interesting trends. Really enjoy the work you and the team do. Great analysis as always, Devin. And as always, we thank you for doing double duty every Friday. You come on the network, and then you come on the podcast. I don't know how you do it. You probably get tired of talking to me, but we're thankful you do stop by. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Jeff. Take care.
Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door, ready to make an entrance. So back on this. Before I have to pull the strap out.
Welcome back. Now time to turn our attention to retirement. Joining me on the line is MarketWatch's retirement reporter, Ms. Alessandra Melito. Hi, Ali. Welcome back to the program.
Hi. How are you?
Pleasure's all mine. I'm doing great. It's a pleasant weekend, a pleasant Friday, and things are doing well. So I'm glad to be chatting with you. Glad to have you back on the show. I know you took a little bit of a break, but I see that you're out there producing a lot of great articles. So what's top of mind for you and the team at MarketWatch this week?
Yeah, so this week not this week, but this week we posted an article that I wrote. It was a question and answer piece with Kevin O'Leary, one of the hosts of Shark Tank. He is a serial investor, and he's got a lot of different businesses, for consumers, but also in investing. So it was really wonderful to speak with him. We chatted about the FIRE movement, which is short for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Mm-hmm. And we also talked about financial literacy and just overall the importance of thinking about retirement planning, no matter what age you are. Mm-hmm. And he had a lot of fun tips and just thoughts overall about that. He's a big fan of financial literacy. He's been doing a lot of work lately with high schoolers. He said it's a huge problem, which obviously it is. And one thing he said was, if you want to be a millionaire by the time you retire, at traditional retirement age, you have to, or you should, start investing $100 a week. So I thought that was pretty interesting. He founded this app, this investing app, and he was just talking about overall the importance of putting away and how lots of people can do $100 a week if they try.
And if you start early, Allie, I think that's what he's advocating for. If you start early, as soon as you get out of college, or if you go into the trades after high school, that time is on your side. So that $100 really has the opportunity to compound. I like that. I mean, saving for retirement doesn't have to be complicated, Allie. And I think he that's his point.
Yeah, definitely not. And he's saying, so he said, saying the word saving for retirement, saving part is great, but people misconstrue that to mean like, bank accounts and things like that. And really you should be investing the money because that's how it's going to grow. So he was just talking about, the fact that a lot of people, they're not familiar with the stock market or just investing in general, or they might be a little too conservative with their money when they're younger and putting money away for their future. So he was just emphasizing why investing is the way to go and how it's not like day trading or anything like that. It's just, putting away every week or every paycheck, whatever it is, $100. And, he said $100 every week, but just the concept of every time you get money, putting some of it in an account for it to grow over time. So, it was really nice conversation. And he also talked about retirement has changed so much, and it's not just a matter of calling it quits when you get to a certain age, but just changing the way that you go about your day, which I liked. Obviously he's been on Shark Tank for I think 12 seasons now.
Wow.
And he talks a lot about how he sold a business with others for billions of dollars, and obviously he could have retired at any moment, but he said that it's boring when you don't have something that you're passionate about that you're working towards. So I think it just kind of highlights how everybody feels that way, even people in the FIRE movement. They might have achieved financial independence at a certain age, but most of them aren't just walking around the house doing nothing. They are taking on side jobs or traveling to places that mean something to them. So it's just a matter of finding your passion, even once you hit that financial independence number.
Yeah, it's interesting is there's been a lot of research I've been reading about by the National Institute of Aging and other grants that they write with other colleges and universities, and there's so much to what you're describing, which is being engaged, and the decline of your cognitive abilities, your ability to think and reason and communicate with other people really comes when you're disassociated, when you're alone, when you're away from people, when you're not engaged. And I think that just that those thoughts of being more engaged, even in when you are financially independent and doing something that you're passionate about, will keep you. You don't have to exercise for 18 hours a day, but if you keep cognitively engaged, you're going to actually probably prolong your life and live a more meaningful life. I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've spoken with plenty of people, not just financial advisors, but therapists and life coaches and all that, and that's what they say. You have to stay busy, and don't think that once you hit retirement that that's it. You just sit on the couch or go take a walk or I don't know, build something. You have to find meaning in the everyday, because otherwise you could fall into a depression. You could become extra lonely if you're used to dealing with colleagues every day. I know that the pandemic has changed that a little bit right now, but the concept still stands. It could be dangerous, honestly, if you retire without some sort of life plan. So he was just, O'Leary was just saying that, those are key components to retirement planning, and that's why you need the funds to do that, especially if whatever your passion is doesn't produce income in retirement.
Well, certainly good lessons, and I think we all, no matter what age, we can be learning new things and doing new things. So, those are words of wisdom, and I love the fact that start early, put $100 a week away, and because that's really manageable. If you do that as a young person, I'm talking late teens into your 20s, you're going to be so much better off than so many other people. Allie, always a pleasure. Great to catch up with you. I'm glad you're back on the program, and look forward to catching up with you again next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye. Welcome back. Now time to talk markets, and joining me on the line, he is the lead anchor for the TD Ameritrade Network. In fact, you can find him on twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, wrapping it all up. Mr. Oliver Rennick. Hey, Ollie. How are you?
What's up, Jeff? Thanks for the intro.
Oh man,
Appreciate it.
well deserved. You are the man. You open the market and you close the market. I mean, there couldn't be a more
That's right.
important person to have on. But in all seriousness, Oliver, it's been kind of an up and down couple of weeks. But this week in particular, I was watching the green and the red kind of intersect each other. A lot of us are sitting back wondering, what do we do? Or hey, what's going on? So we always come to you to break that down. What's going on?
Appreciate it. So the best way to describe what's happening right now is the intense selling that hit the market at the beginning of the month has ebbed somewhat in its rate of decline this week. But if you really kind of squint and really become a disciple of the charts, then it's still hard to argue that this market is not downtrending since September. So month began, we peaked out on September 2nd. Had a real hard 10% sell-off in a heartbeat, fastest ever in just about 2 trading sessions. And now we've continued to kind of grind lower. So we've made lower highs and lower lows, which means it looks like the buy the dip is ailing. Not failing, but definitely ailing. So we're kind of now just sitting under some important technical levels and waiting to see who's ready to buy where. It's really hard. It's gotten a lot harder to describe the market kind of using fundamental tools, and therefore we spend a lot of time, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about levels and technicals, and I can explain why that kind of makes sense right now if you want, but that's kind of where we're at.
And I mean, you've had a multitude of guests on this week. I've been kind of following the coverage. I can't watch it all the time, but a lot of it. And are people, in general, are analysts bullish, bearish, or it just kind of is evenly split? I mean, how are people feeling with some of this uncertainty? You had the new Fed inflation rate policy. Inflation policy. You've got the uncertainty of the election. I mean, how are stock analysts kind of taking this all in stride?
For the most part, my guests generally still remain bullish. If you track some of the sentiment measurements and surveys that people in the market follow, they mostly show a slight build in bearish views over the last 2 weeks or so. For the most part, those same surveys were fairly hopeful in the late part of the summer. They really didn't start turning more positive until late July and August as the market really got frothy. But it's just kind of tough because there's also not a lot of really super hyper economically bullish people. So in some ways, I kind of have this operating theory where there's enough bulls and there's enough bears basically to where you could have a slow grind lower in the market. The reasoning for that is that when you have very steep crashes in the market, it generally is, a cleansing kind of event to some extent, where then people become so fearful that positioning moves in such a way that it's hard to really even sell more, because then people just kind of exhaust themselves to selling. They panic, like we did in March, basically. They panic and they sell, and it gets very intense, and then everybody turns bearish, and then the market kind of goes back the other way. There's always this kind of trader's old adage that the market will go, in the direction that it hurts the most people. So there's kind of that right now where
it's a relief.
The bulls aren't really losing hope so much. I've kind of said a few times, and in fact, I said this the first week of September, it was very odd that nobody even was talking about the speed of the correction that happened in 2 days, the fastest correction ever, in 10% in a day and a half. Yet because we ran so far, most of the conversation you still hear is, oh, well, I'm down on this stock over this month, but I'm still up 300% on the year. I'm still up 200% on the year. I'm still up 80% on the year. And I think as long as people say that and think that way, then you're not going to have real panic. However, there are people who then will use these rallies that we get to sell and take profits that they have. And I think that's kind of what we're testing right now. And that's why the technical stuff becomes so interesting, because right now it's very difficult to know what the fundamental outlook is. It's very difficult to know what to expect from earnings, very difficult to know what to expect from the economy here. Almost impossible kind of to know what to expect from the political side. Even though people talk about risk around the election, it seems like, both sides do want to spend. It's just how much, and probably some wrangling between now and the election. But, generally speaking, there's probably it hasn't been a good bet to bet against stimulus from the government. So all of those things put together, and you don't really have a great way to describe fundamentals. So now what we're doing is just kind of testing appetite, testing what people are willing to pay for things. And that's what technicals are. Technicals are just a way to describe things. It's not this, kind of magic mumbo jumbo that, kind of gets a bad rap from the 80s and 90s and stuff. Oh, this happened, Fibonacci spirals, and you should buy here, all this. That's not really the way we view technicals here. Use it as a way to describe things and to see where sentiment is. And right now, sentiment is telling us, price action is telling us that we're trending lower, and there's not a reason to expect that should change until there is evidence people can tolerate higher prices. And right now we're solidly downtrending. That's basically the message of the week.
Yeah. Well,
slowing. The downtrend has slowed a little bit. We're downtrending, but a slower rate than we were a week ago.
Well, there's only one person I would turn to tell us this, and it's you, Oliver. And I really appreciate. I mean, you break it down very nicely, and both in a fundamental sense and in a technical sense. And I think the audience appreciates that. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have fun on the markets on the close, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Appreciate it. All right, thanks, Jeff. Bye.
Welcome back, and now we're going to end the show with a view from Capitol Hill. And joining me on the line, they're the Legal Eagles, Dave Levine, Kevin Walsh. Both are principals with Groom Law Group, an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, how are you?
We are great, Jeff. Thanks for having us. It's going to be a sprint to the election, so it's going to be an interesting couple weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's an understatement. Don't you think so, Kevin? I mean, what's top of mind when you're thinking about both candidates' proposals?
Well, I mean, top of mind when I'm thinking about both candidates, it's probably not retirement is the number one issue. That being said, I think the election.
Wait, Kevin. I thought all the news in the last week was just about retirement.
We wish.
Well, I mean, I think we've got two candidates who have decided they want to pursue a working retirement.
That's true. That's true. That was clever.
Exactly. The new policy is we're going to eliminate all retirement plans, but something tells me it's more than that.
So I think it's probably more interesting to focus on Vice President Biden's proposals because, to a large extent, the Trump administration's proposals look a lot like what's been going on for the last 4 years. Of particular interest and really getting a lot of focus in recent days is the Biden team has kind of released a proposal which would revamp the incentives for retirement savings. And what's interesting about this proposal is that it doesn't look like it's actually going to raise revenue, which means that the proposal is less likely to just get attached to some spending bill and would probably need to move as more of a standalone revamping of the retirement system. But kind of to cut to the chase, what the proposal does is it suggests that instead of giving people, an above-the-line deduction for money they contribute to their 401k, the government would instead, essentially match your contributions by giving you a 26% refundable tax credit for every dollar. So you essentially get a 26-cent refundable credit for every dollar you contribute to your 401k plan. What this does is if you're in a tax bracket that's below 26%, so if you're in one of the lower brackets, you might actually get more of a tax break by contributing to your 401k plan than you do today. On the other hand, if you're in kind of the 36% tax bracket today, you'll be getting less of a tax advantage for contributions. So this is seen as, it's being proposed as kind of a fairness, a retirement equity issue. Mm-hmm. Kind of the criticism of this is that in some ways it could look like double taxation for higher earners. So essentially, instead of getting the full tax break for contributions, they're only getting 26%. And then when you receive a distribution in retirement, you're being taxed on it as ordinary income again. So in essence, the money is being taxed once on distribution and then at least somewhat partially at contribution. So that could meet some resistance. And again, these are proposals in a campaign, and retirement policy really has not been the focal point. David, do you want to expand on this, or do you want to talk about what could happen to some of the recent regulatory initiatives?
I think I'd expand because, Kevin, a question to you on this one.
Okay.
Understanding the credit idea. Well, I figure why not? I know you love the stuff. An interesting idea. If you get the credit, what if you do all your contributions as Roth? I think I'm not actually asking you to answer the question unless you want to jump in with thoughts. But if you get a credit and everything is Roth and it's never taxed again, doesn't that eliminate the double taxation question?
Well, so the proposal hasn't been talking about getting a 26% credit for Roth contributions. So I think it remains to be seen in the details if they go that way. I mean, that would be a very interesting proposal, but I'd be surprised because that would seem to be a very expensive proposal. So I guess we'll see.
I agree. I think to me, the point of that is it shows that this is early days, but it's a proposal, and we'll see how it all fits together if and when there is a Biden administration.
Yeah, can I just
if or when?
Yeah, if or when. But yeah, I mean, I think you make a really good point, David. A lot of times, campaigns they have a great group of thinkers, right? People come up with ideas, they put them out, and then what actually has to happen is when you become president, he or she has to work with the Congress to actually pass things. So you don't get to do sweeping changes. These are just ideas, broad brushstrokes, and then when you hit the rubber meets the road is when the Congress, the Senate, and the president kind of all work together, and the regulatory framework works together. Is that a fair assumption? Fair statement?
A very, very fair assumption. It's just kind of like when we have discussions together here and we all work together. Exactly.
Yeah. Dave, Kevin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, I think another area where we could see changes is in the regulatory agenda. Mm-hmm. In recent months, we've talked repeatedly about brand new proposals from the Trump administration. In particular, we've seen proposals that relate to, limiting the ability of plans to choose to make available investment options that contain, social goals or environmental goals. And in all likelihood, if there was a Biden administration, the regulatory agenda would change. I don't want to say 180 degrees, but probably pretty close to 180 degrees. And mm-hmm. I think we'd see some of these rules we've talked about possibly not only rolled back or, repealed through Congress, but we could see, a Biden administration go through their own rulemaking mm-hmm. to provide rules that are, more favorable towards ESG investing or more favorable about, when plans should get involved in shareholder rights issues.
Voting.
Yeah.
Yes. Kevin, you make a good point, but I know this is not the Legal Eagle show, so I figure maybe we table some of this and have it another week.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Guys, thanks so much for the quick analysis. Probably lots more to talk about, and we'll do so in future weeks. Have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thanks so much.
It's always good to be on the show.
Bye, guys. Well, that wraps up this episode of the BRN Sunday podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some entertainment and some education along the way. I want to thank all of our great contributors this week. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow for BRN AM, back on the network. I'll be joined by Kevin Kelly. He is the co-founder of Delphi Digital. We're going to be talking about cryptocurrency and a lot more. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.